Matt Stadland on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
I've never taken a recreational drug in my life. I never even drank coffee before I started working on these overnight shows on LBC, and it is incredibly useful, I have to tell you that. 0345 6060 973. It really is a drug, coffee, isn't it? It's just a legal one. I'm really looking forward to the conversation I think we're about to have with Abbas, because I'm sure he's got some enlightening things to say about the psychology of evil. Abbas, can we get to the psychology of evil and how it works?
Yeah, don't build me up too much, Matt. I might let you down.
Try not to.
You're right. Well, I think intrinsically, obviously, there is a minority of a population that are, psychologically, physiologically, they are evil because they're psychopaths. I mean, that's a medical condition.
Well, I haven't used the word psychopath yet, but I did mean to earlier, yes.
Yeah, I mean, because they simply have no empathy whatsoever. They don't feel any remorse. They don't feel any guilt. They don't feel the suffering of another human being. But they're a very small minority, thankfully. I think
some of them might feel the suffering of another human being. They might enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what a psychopath often is, But I think that there's the old story of the Red Indian, the child asking his father, about the two wolves that live inside of you, and he said a bad wolf and a good wolf, and he said which one is the stronger one, and he said to his son, the one that you feed the most. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. So I think, if nobody's a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, if you're a normal sort of, child, you're not going to want to kill lots of people. That you just want to play with your football or whatever it might be. But clearly something within the lifespan of that individual takes them down that route. And as the saying goes, the more you feed that side of your personality, the more extreme you become. Perhaps the more extreme your reactions or your actions become as well.
I suspect that in the case of killers, for some, once they've killed one person, it becomes easier to kill another.
I'm sure that does happen. And I think also people play the gymnastics, the linguistic and mind psychological gymnastics within their heads to justify, the horrors that they're committing, whether it's revenge, whether it's whatever it might be. And of course, the human mind, the human psychology, often to nullify the guilt, will look at whatever it can find to somehow nullify that guilt. Now, for some people, it might be a very twisted interpretation, I don't like to use the word extreme interpretation. I think it's more of a manipulation or fabrication, because I think it takes you so far away from the core teachings of all of the prophets, which was not to kill innocent souls, not to shed blood, not to steal, not to harm anyone. And it goes against those very core teachings. Yes, you will find verses that you can take out of context, that you can twist and turn. And that's why I was sort of, Paul comes on to your radio show often, and it's always about bashing religion, how evil religion is, and if you give yourself up to religion, and somehow you'll become some sort of and if you follow morality governed by religion, then somehow you will become, a bad person. When in reality, in the last 100 years, if you look at the statistics, the vast majority of wars and deaths are nothing to do with religion. They're all geopolitical issues. And in fact, if you look at the work of, for example, Scott Atran...
But religion can be a very useful and wicked poison to be injected into geopolitics, can it not? If you think about the attempt to wipe the Jews off the face of the map, at the heart of that may have been, in Hitler's mind, God knows what was going on in his mind, but it might have been trying to use the Jews as a scapegoat to shore up his power and to solidify his power base. But he did pick on a religious and ethnic grouping in order to achieve his aims. Now, he may well have hated Jews in and of themselves, but you see what I mean? There might have been a geopolitical idea behind it as part of it, but religion was definitely involved in it, or the religion of others was involved in it.
I think the question here is, would Hitler have done those things without any religious influence whatsoever. And I think the chances are he probably would have done, because I think he was a classic example of...
Yes, without his own... without his... I'm not sure to the extent to which religion played a role in his life, but I'm saying that the people he picked on were loosely bunched together by an ethnic or religious identity. So religion, in a sense, did creep into it.
Yes, because it's human psychology. They did that study, didn't they? Where they got a group of people and they split them up and they made half of them prison guards and they made the other half prisoners. And it was supposed to be just an experiment, but they had to pull it because they had to stop it, because the prison guards suddenly took up this role and enacted out, quite heinous, sort of punishments towards the prisoners. And the university had to stop the study because they were shocked as to how much the roles affected the psychology of those people. And that was just a controlled experiment. So, and that's why my point to you, Matt, is that, and that is why subjective morality, which is purely based upon social consensus, I feel as a Muslim, is where a lot of problems can arise, because if your morality is based purely upon that we are simply born from a primeval soup, and nothing really matters, because ultimately
I disagree with that, though. You can say it, but I disagree strongly that unless you have religion, nothing matters. I feel very strongly.
I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that at all. In fact, there are many people, in fact, most people perhaps who don't follow any religion are also very, very moral. Of course they are. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying for those fringes, for those people who are feeding that wolf, as it were, the one that's violent, the one that wants to do horrible things, I think religion can play a very powerful tool in holding those people back, because you're warned against these type of actions against humanity, which could result in yourself being questioned on the Day of Judgment, for example.
No, religion can work both ways. It can, but I get Paul's basic point, which is that you mustn't. I'm trying to think of the word, and it's not a bought responsibility. I've lost the word, but you mustn't say that you are going to absolve yourself of responsibility simply because there is an ancient text that tells you what to do. And I do understand what he's saying. I'm not for a second saying, though, that everyone who is religious is bound to do bad things. Not at all. And I think the Christian religion does has had an important role in underpinning so many of our moral structures in this country. Let me ask you this, Abbas. I sat on I chaired a panel at an event not so long ago, and we were trying to talk about why it was that most terrorists are men. And anyway, we came round to the role of religion in Islamic extremist terror. And the people on the panel were saying it's nothing to do with religion. It's not about that. It's about power, they were probably saying. It's about manipulation. It's about abuse. It's about ideology. But it's not about religion. Now, I find that difficult to agree with, because I think that religion does play a role in Islamist extremist terror. How do we begin to understand what was going through the mind of this Taliban killer, mass killer, when he killed, we imagine it's a he, killed all these people yesterday in Kabul? If, as Paul was saying, or someone else was saying, he probably did shout, "God is great," just as he detonated his bomb. We don't know whether he did. But if he did do that, how do we understand the psychology of that individual? And what role do you think religion played in that killing?
Well, let me answer both of your questions, and in fact the latter one first. Firstly, to try to understand mindless violence, a rational mind, I don't think, can actually fathom and actually fully understand that level of irrationality, that level of insanity. Because clearly we're not insane, we're not like that. So we're not really going to be able to understand somebody's mind.
But that killer, do you think it's fair to surmise that killer would not have killed those people, Abbas, if he had not believed in God?
Well, see, now this is the interesting topic, interesting question. And that's why I mentioned Scott Atran. If you have an opportunity, please do watch some of his lectures, because the research that he has actually carried out is very analytical, very empirical. It has thousands of studies.
Okay, but what's the point, though? What's the thrust of the point? Yeah.
Well, his conclusion is actually, because he studied suicide bombing and terrorism in the Islamic context as well, or Muslim context, let's say. And his argument was that it may be unpalatable for a lot of people to try to understand that actually religion isn't a part to play, because most of these people, most of them, have a very rudimentary understanding of religion in the first place. Secondly, it's more of a gang and a belonging type cultural, like a normal gang would go out and do violence. It's more according to those sort of lines.
But suicide bombers would not take their own lives in the way that they do if they didn't believe in an afterlife, if they weren't convinced, even in a very rudimentary way, even if they were only converted or radicalised weeks before. They would not take their own lives if they didn't think they were going somewhere better, would they?
But look, Matt, obviously there is a religious context that they are using, whether it's a twisted, as I say, a manipulated or a fabricated version of that religion. Clearly that does play a part. Now, would they then kill themselves? Well, the first suicide bomber was actually a Tamil, was not even
in Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka. Right, and so my point is that, of course, there's a religious context whereby they have clearly fabricated and manipulated the religion to suit their predispositions to go and do those acts. But the instigator, the propagator, the thing that actually, the catalyst that sends them to do those evil acts, I can assure you, are not religion. It's more geopolitical. This is what Professor Robert Payton...
Yeah, they use, as I said earlier, they use religion as a poison. They use a misrepresentation of religion as a poison to inject into the veins of people who go and do their bidding, who go and carry out the evil acts. Abbas, great to speak to you. I'm not disappointed at all. I think we reached a really interesting conclusion together there. Abbas in Redbridge, thank you. If you'd like to respond to anything Abbas or indeed anyone else has said, if anything I've said, 0345 6060 9.